Why is it that I want to learn another language? Is it worth spending the extra time in the free time that I do have to learn another language? Well, since living here in Japan for a little over a year now, obviously it gives more of a reason for me to learn another language, to learn specifically Japanese, because I am living in a foreign country with a very new language that I'm very unfamiliar with. So, I need Japanese. I need to learn Japanese in order for me to just communicate with people, to be able to make friends, to be able to get around, to go to places, and be able to order food, ask questions, start conversations, understand what people are trying to say to me, things like that. It's it's just basically for practicality, for practical reasons that I need to learn another language, like I'm forced to. Obviously, like I don't have to put that much effort. I don't have to learn another language because you could still live in a foreign country where it's not your native language and still be able to get by as long as you know how to maneuver and navigate through places. But you do have to pick up on the language just a little bit, not that you have to be fluent. But for me, it's important. Obviously, I feel compelled to learn a new language if I'm living in a different country. I want to learn the native tongue because it'll make life so much more easier for me to just navigate, to make friends, to have like a community. And for me, being intentional with learning Japanese while living in Japan, it has been so helpful. Especially now it's been over a year later since I've been here. The fact that I've studied for a year and I've been here really trying to learn the language, like knowing the amount of Japanese that I know now is so much better than not knowing it at all because like I could communicate a lot better. I know what people are trying to say to me. I can be able to order food or know what people are trying to tell me if they're instructing me something, like things like that. It just makes life a bit easier. Although I'm not at a place of fluency, but I feel like I'm taking steps towards that direction. And the longer I live here, the better I'll get at Japanese. And so it's for that reason why it just makes sense just to learn another language, especially if you're going to live in another country. And I think years prior to that, I did have more of a desire to learn other languages. Obviously, English is my primary language growing up in the States, growing up in California, born and raised, you know, that's the main language that I grew up to. Along with that was also Korean. You know, the fact being that I am Korean and both my parents speak Korean, I would have to use Korean at home. But my preference was always English, and my Korean never really got that good. You know, I guess you could say I'm like borderline fluent, but I mean, there's just a lot of vocabulary words that I'm not familiar with, and yeah, it's hard to say that I'm that good at Korean. I wouldn't admit to that. And I did go to Korean school when I was a lot younger too, but I never took it seriously. And as a matter of fact, I didn't even want to be there because I'd rather spend my Saturdays just playing with my friends or playing basketball or doing other things other than going to school and trying to study and learn. But looking back, I wish I took it more seriously because I realized how much of an asset that is, how valuable that is to have another language and being able to communicate with a different group of people. And so, the past like a couple years ago, I came to the realization that, oh man, like I think it would be useful to just get better at the different languages and try to be, bi or trilingual, try to learn as many languages as I can, especially since I also really got into travel. Uh, one of my hobbies really is traveling all around the world, and I think it's cool to see different cultures and meet new people and talk to people, and what helps with that is learning other languages to be able to talk to people and communicate and socialize, and that would help you navigate and get around to places a lot much easier. And so, Korean's like a base language that I grew up learning that I had. So I wanted to build on that. And, I would try to study as much as I can. I would try to be more intentional in picking up words. Um, as I was more intentional with learning the language and actually studying it. And also with my previous job, doing a lot of marketing and sales, like I also, wanted to get good at Spanish because a lot of the customers and clients that I was talking to were Spanish speakers. And I had to use Spanish and I used a lot of Google Translate. But as I was using it and talking to a lot of Spanish speaking folks, like I tried to study it and I tried to remember all these terms and words and phrases because it would help me with my job, and it did, and I think it was improving. And another thing too is the foreign language that I took in high school was Spanish, so I took it for several years, and I picked up on some Spanish, but not fluent at all. But I wanted to build on that and see how far I could take it. So initially, those are the before coming to Japan, those are the two languages that I really wanted to learn and get better at. And I did try my best to set aside time to study it. And but then once I made the decision to come to Japan, uh, it was only best to just focus on Japanese since I'm living here. And honestly, like before coming to Japan, Japanese was not a language that I really wanted to learn. I felt like Korean was something I wanted to learn just because that's my roots, that's my background, and that's a language that I've already known. And Spanish because I think it's also relatively a popular language. Many countries do speak Spanish, especially in South America. So I thought it'd be a pretty useful language to learn, and also it's a language that I've studied before in high school. So it's just building upon something that I already know, which is where like those languages specifically were more appealing. And I feel like Japanese wasn't really like a dominant language that a lot of people use around the world. So it wasn't that big of an appeal to me. But because I'm living here in Japan, it gives me more of an incentive and a bigger motivation to learn the language here. And I think if I lived in another country with a different foreign language other than Spanish or Korean, then I think I would really try to learn that language too. Because again, there's like practical reasons for me to do that, especially if I'm going to be in a country long term. And so, it's just it has been so beneficial for me to learn Japanese here living in Japan, and it's just so much easier to get around places to be able to make friends and do all that. And although it wasn't a language that I initially wanted to learn in the first place, because of the circumstances, like I felt like there was a need to do it. And I posted previous videos of me about my language learning specifically through Japanese, and I just want to share the reasons for that. And I feel like it has helped just a lot in making life a lot easier to just uh it's just easier to navigate. It's just easier to do things here in Japan once you get a grasp of the language. But it's still pretty hard and still really challenging, and it's a process because you're you're always stumbling and you're always messing up, you're always making mistakes, but it gives you opportunity to learn from those mistakes and learn specific words that you didn't know before, and usually in those moments it allows you to just memorize those words a lot better. So yeah, it's just helpful. Like I just feel like it's just a must. If you're gonna live in another country with a different foreign tongue, you gotta learn that tongue, you gotta learn that language for you to just navigate, just to live life in that country, in that, and be familiar, more familiar with the people and the culture, and just better at communicating. Because at the end of the day, if you're gonna socialize, if you're gonna be around people, you gotta learn how to socialize and communicate, and that means you gotta know the language. So, yeah, those are my reasons of why I learn another language. And if, you know, maybe, maybe for you, you might find the reason to learn another language because another thing too is it's very challenging, it's hard, and maybe you need something in life that's gonna push you and challenge you and do things that takes you out of your comfort zone. Because living in a different country with a language that you don't know, it definitely pushes you and takes you out of that comfort zone. And many times there's moments where I just don't know what's going on, and it almost you got to figure out how to communicate. You got to figure out like how to get out of this uncomfortable situation, or a situation where you're not sure what's going on. Uh but if you get better at the language, and if you get better at communicating, then it'll help you navigate through those specific instances and just make life a lot easier.